Now joining us to share his expertise on South Africa is Abdullahi Boru Halakhe. He's an Africa security and policy analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, Abdullahi. Now the march, from what I understand, was initially supposed to take place on the 21st of March to coincide with Human Rights Day, but the Johannesburg Metro Police Department banned it because of threats of violence from anti-immigrant groups. What does this say about how bad the xenophobia has gotten in South Africa?
I think xenophobia in South Africa has gotten out of hands, and I think for the people who are involved in groups like Operation Dudula, I think they are trying to treat the symptoms rather than the underlying cause. But the prescription that they are giving it is worse than the problems that they are trying to address. Just like the report said from South Africa has one of the largest unemployment rates in the world. It's in the upwards of, it's over 30%. And the dream that many South Africans had, including people like who are involved in Operation Dudula, has not been realized. And that is to a large extent because of so many factors, list of which was the lost decade when the former president Jacob Zuma was in power, when by all matrices, particularly economic ones, South Africa has done worse. And then COVID came, even the little that was there was completely eviscerated.
So you've given us a fairly holistic view about some of the contributing factors as to why this is going on. What would you say is the major draw card for immigrants coming to South Africa in the first place? What are the conditions they're leaving, and why is South Africa the best option for them?
Thank you. I think South Africa has a rich history of, in fact, before ANC came into power, South Africa, during the apartheid period, they used to invite so many low-skilled workers from the neighboring countries who are not as advanced economically as them, your Zimbabwe's, your Zambia's, and they used to come and they work there. So there's a fair degree of history to this. And so for many of these countries, most of them small, not largely economically viable, they look at South Africa, particularly after the end of apartheid, as a place where they can go and realize their dreams. But it is becoming very difficult, even for South Africans in South Africa, to attain, quote unquote, the myth of, South African exceptionalism and the dreams of being South Africa. So that is what, the economy cannot support that. I also just want to make very clear the numbers that we are talking of people who are immigrants coming into the country as of 2020 was only 2.9% over, a country that is almost 60 million. They are not a lot, but they go to sectors mostly that ideally South African would go on, and so it becomes a very easy target for South Africans, people like in the Dudula Operation Dudula, sorry.
Now, the World Bank released its Inequality in South Africa report, which confirmed that South Africa is the most unequal society in the world, with 10% of the population accumulating 71% of all the wealth in the country. What are the economic and political choices that the ANC have made that have brought South Africa to this point? Can you just describe for us some of the policy issues that have been coming up for the ANC, particularly when it comes to election time?
I think South Africa, the ANC party was in an impossible position when they came into power. They controlled the politics, but practically all the levers of economy was controlled by, traditional, settler white community. So that became very difficult. So every subsequent elections, South African ANC party, they gave these promises that things will be better, we will improve everything. That included, a program through which a very few minority of Black South African, what's called the Black Empowerment Program, they came through and they became extraordinarily wealthy, including the current president. So I think these are some of the policy choices, but also the other one is just the corruption that, that's been bedeviling this ANC party. I think that has really turned off a lot of people, and a lot of people are taking the choices that they are making now, including, taking law into their own hands. And I think the current president, he's in an impossible position. He cannot on one hand say, look, many African countries gave ANC armed support, training, and hosted most of them. Now that their situation, for instance, in a country like Zimbabwe are not good, both politically and economically, they have to leave. That will be a very difficult position to be in. But also uncontain the current problem, whether it goes after the immigrants or other groups, particularly wealthy South Africans, it doesn't fill anybody with a great deal of confidence. You need investors to know that there is not crime and property rights will be respected. So it's an impossible position to be in for this administration.
You mentioned just a moment ago that the ANC has been promising at election time that it will make the conditions better for people in South Africa. But who are they actually talking to there? Are they talking to South Africans or to those migrants? From what I understand, election time is also a time where the ANC has been stoking anti-immigration sentiment. So is there a problem with how it's reinstating who they're actually looking after here?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult because it's a big umbrella. It has got, your unions, it has got the labor, it has got so many people within it. And there are some factions that are very critical about people who are not South Africans, who are saying, like, for instance, Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans in that country, they probably face tremendous amount of pressure because I think they are the largest group in the country. But that was a function of the history that, ZANU-PF and ANC shared, where, Zimbabwe, because it was a frontline country and was providing support. So after ANC came into power, they allowed for a special permit for Zimbabweans to come into South Africa, and their plans to reconsider, that special permit like that. It is not the mainstream ANC, but a faction within ANC that really feels very strongly about this.
Okay, really interesting insight. Thank you so much, Abdullahi Boru Halakhe there from the Africa Security and Policy Analyst. Stay tuned. More news